Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's Thursday, which is our favorite day of the week because we get to talk to amazing people in our weekly series, the Impact Series. I'm Jessica Lauretti. I'm the managing director of the Anthem Awards. The Anthem Awards is a brand new award brought to you by the Webbies, which is a new platform and community that honors purpose and mission-driven work from brands, organizations, and individuals around the world. In our second season, and we have our final entry deadline tomorrow, Friday, September 23rd. So if you are working on purpose and mission-driven work, we want to see what you've been up to. We want to honor and recognize and celebrate your work, and we want to showcase it on our platform. We really want to encourage you to participate in this year's award. So make sure you go to anthemawards.com. You can get all the information that you need to enter your projects there. We also have a customer service team that is here to help you. You can reach out to Kara at anthemawards.com. Okay, so without further ado, I am so excited to have with us today the creator and the host of PoliticsGirl, Leigh McGowan. Hi, Leigh. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I love the work you're doing. I love the Webbies. I think this is the future of how we get information and how we make world change. So I'm thrilled to be a part of this today.
Thank you so much for being here, and congratulations. Full transparency, I met Leigh because she's a Webby Award winner this year and met her at the Webbies event. So congratulations on your win.
Oh, thank you. It was super thrilling. When you create a project, I created this to make change in the world and to really make a difference. I didn't make it to make money, which I probably should have thought about a little bit more. And I didn't make it to win awards. But when you do, it reminds you that what you're doing is worthwhile and you're putting in the effort for a real reason.
Yeah, that's awesome. So start off by telling us your story. I mean, for folks who aren't familiar with you, like, how did you get into this? What is your background? How did you get to become PoliticsGirl?
Well, it's an interesting story, right? I'm a huge believer in the fact that everyone should be talking about politics, right? Like anyone who knows me knows I've been going on about politics for forever. It's something I've always been passionate about, how the government works, who's in charge of the government. But for a really long time, I felt like I was alone in those feelings. I would start to talk about a political issue and I would just watch my friends' eyes glaze over. And people just didn't want to talk about it, right? They didn't want to have to think about it. They felt it was exhausting. They thought it didn't make a difference. And it was kind of that apathy and that lack of understanding about how our government works and how it affects our lives that really got our country to where it is today. And I don't think it's some shocking revelation if I tell you we're not in a good place. So I started PoliticsGirl as basically a reaction to everyone in my life not caring about politics. And I wanted to do something about that, right? It was after the second Obama midterms, and we had lost the Senate, and the Republicans had basically become straight obstructionists at that point. And the thought of them having more power just horrified me. But what I found even more unsettling was how no one around me seemed to care. So I talked to them and I realized that this sort of lack of interest came from a lack of understanding. People just didn't understand how the system worked. So they didn't understand why it was a big deal. And they didn't really have the time or the inclination to figure it out. So I just thought, well, why don't I figure it out for them? I'm a nerd. I love research. I love politics. And so I just thought if I can explain things to people, then maybe they will care. And if they care, then maybe we can start to make some change in the system. So I basically started PoliticsGirl as online civics. I mean, I literally started it as a YouTube channel in 2015 explaining where the Iowa caucus comes from or why we should care about the Supreme Court. And it did really well. People showed their kids it. It was interesting because, it has my personality. So it's civics, but it's like, civics with sass. And then
is that your tagline, civics with sass?
It should be probably because or who I am. And then as we were coming up to the Trump election, it was hard for me to kind of keep it nonpartisan because I had a lot of feelings. And then when he was elected, when Trump became president, everyone and their mother was doing political commentary. And I thought, okay, well, I don't really know how I fit into this. And so I just kind of kept up on it. It was what I loved to do. It was what I was interested in. And then when we got locked down for the pandemic and all I was doing was reading news, stuck in my house, I was following my husband around the house basically all day, ranting at him. And he was like, Leigh, I love you. You're wonderful. And I love that you're passionate about this, but like, can we direct this somewhere else? And I thought, okay, well, where am I supposed to do it? So I put a phone in the windowsill of my kitchen and I started talking directly to the camera. And that's where Breakfast Rants was born. And I literally was in my pajamas when I started it with no makeup on. And when I got to about 100,000 followers on TikTok, because I started on TikTok because I thought at least I'll reach the youth. The youth are the ones that have to, take over this world that we've broken for them. And so I want to tell them why they should care. I want to give them the facts. And when I got to about 100,000 viewers, I thought, maybe I should get dressed. So I would get dressed. I would get dressed to do the rants. And then I got to 200,000 followers. And I thought, I should probably add some mascara to this event. And the thing is that then the TikTok channel, it really took off. So this little YouTube channel became a big TikTok channel. And then I moved it over to Twitter, and this big TikTok channel became kind of an influential Twitter feed. And it was for Breakfast Rants that I won a Webby, because it allows me to explain things to people in a way that they either can't put words to or can't quite get their heads around. And they're short and they're easy to share. And that was kind of my point. I wanted people to understand big issues in small, digestible pieces that they could share with their friends and family to either explain something or start a conversation. And the podcast came after that. It's just an extension of the Breakfast Rant. It's the same vibe, but it's a deeper dive for people who really want to know more about issues, want to be smarter, want to say like, yeah, why is our public education screwed up? Or like, what did happen to our media? Or how come everyone gets every word wrong? From fascism to communism to socialism, we just throw the words around indiscriminately.
Yeah,
and I thought, the same thing. I can help fix this. And so that's where it started, and it's really taken off, which is wonderful for not just for me, but for the amount of people who are interested, because it just keeps growing. And, it gives me real hope.
What the feedback that you get from folks who watch the Breakfast Rants? Like, why do you think that TikTok format and like the Breakfast Rant, I'm assuming is like very brief, like morning thoughts, can you talk about the format of it? Why do you think it resonates with people?
Well, look, it's in my actual kitchen, which is a mess, like most people's. I've got stuff stuck to my fridge. There's always some sort of state of bananas on the top of my fridge, because there's no room on my kitchen counter for them. And the bananas have their own flippin'
life cycle.
They do, but they also have their own fan base. People are like, the bananas are looking a little, you might want to, you're out of bananas. Like, people are very interested in the bananas.
It's time to make banana bread.
Yeah, exactly. I've had banana bread recipes sent to me. And I think it's just because it's authentic. It's from a place of pure passion, real research, truth, and it's brief and to the point. And it comes with emotion that people are already feeling. They just don't know what to do with it. And I think so when I put up a rant, which now, they now get hundreds of millions of views, which is wonderful because it means that many people care. I think people can really resonate with it because they think, yeah, that's how I am. And this is just a real person. And, there's a series of trolls that like to assume I'm being paid by Soros and I'm working on a green screen. And I always think like, I'm working on a green screen. There's a freaking pull-up bar behind me. If I had a green screen, I promise you I wouldn't put a pull-up bar in my doorway. Yeah. It's the ugliest thing you've ever seen in your life. But my boys like to do some work. So it stays there because this is my real home and these are my real thoughts. And I think I don't owe anyone anything because I'm not owned by anyone. I don't have corporate sponsors. I'm not owned by billionaires. So I'm able to just tell people the truth, and people are starving for the truth.
What are some, give us a couple subjects, topics that you've done recently?
In the rants or in the podcast?
In the Breakfast Rants.
Let's see. I just did Abbott and DeSantis's ridiculous stunt to Martha's Vineyard.
Okay. Yeah.
I like to break down things that are you kind of have an assumption about, or you might wonder about. I just did one about where are Trump's lawyers? And my purpose was to talk about, like, listen, if we go from the assumption that Donald Trump is a completely innocent, wonderful president who did nothing wrong, which is what he says all the time, and which I think a lot of his supporters believe. And we say he's been, what's that?
Former president. Yeah.
Thank you, former president. But if you go from the assumption, he started trying to find good lawyers when he was claiming that the election was stolen in 2020, when he was still the president. And he still couldn't find, your top of the class, Harvard, Yale, Stanford lawyers. He does not have big firms out of New York or LA or Miami. Like, he does not have these big lawyers. He's got your Jenna Ellis's and your, OAN hosts and Rudy Giuliani. Like, these are the people that he's left with. And if you go with the assumption that he is innocent, being targeted by the FBI, a billionaire who can obviously pay for any lawyer he wants, where are they? Because conservative lawyers should be lining up around the block to support him, to work for him. These are career-changing cases, and yet no one is there. So I kind of try and do those sort of rants, and people can go, yeah, where are the top firms? Like, how come they're not there? If my guy is so innocent, if this is my guy and everything he says is true, then he should have a lineup around the block of top-of-the-line lawyers. And yet, where are they? So I do things like that. I do things like that. And then the podcast is just deeper concepts, right? Like I was saying to you before, I mean, one of my favorite episodes on the podcast started off as what I thought would be a simple episode, where I was just doing, as I was talking to you about, these words that we use wrong. People say, oh, you're a socialist, you're a communist, this person's a Marxist. And I thought, most people don't know what these words mean. They're using them indiscriminately. They're using them wrong. And I'll just do an episode of the podcast that kind of breaks it down. And then as I was researching it, I realized you can't explain what socialism is without explaining what capitalism is. And you can't explain what communism is without explaining what socialism is. And you can't do either without putting them in a historical context. So this episode I thought would be simple turned out to sort of the, ancient Greece all the way to Russia invading Ukraine. Yeah, it was bananas. But I learned so much researching it. And it's all this stuff that you think where you go, I know about this, I know about that. But then you're reading it and you think, oh, that's what happened with the Berlin Wall. That's when we built it. And it was because of X, Y, or Z. And so when I finished the episode, I was taping it. And my husband, who's my producer, was like, I didn't know half of that. And I was like, I know, right? Like, it's stuff you think and you want to be smarter. And then I had people just calling and writing me after that episode came out, and they were like, thank you so much, because I feel so much smarter. And I just think that's how we all want to feel. We want to go into politics. We want to go into our country engaged, but you only start engaged if you understand. If you don't understand, it goes right over your head. And that's what I don't want. I want people to care. And that starts with knowledge. So that's why I do what I do.
You talked a little bit about trolls earlier. Can you talk, politics, it's interesting to me because I've also been somebody who has always loved politics. And as you mentioned, politics is like a pretty nerdy thing. And in the past decade or so, politics has become sport and has become very popular and very cool in a way that I don't think I ever thought that it would become, but also at the same time has become very divisive. We've seen such an incredible change in our society in the United States, but and also other societies around the world in regards to how we approach and think about and talk about politics with each other. How do you navigate that space? I think you are coming from a place of, you genuinely care about this. It's important to you to be factual, educational, accurate. But how do you navigate this whole space while also, essentially sharing your opinion but also keeping it factual and truthful as well?
Yeah, no, it's a hard question because, like you said, it's become like sport, and I think that's a problem. Politics isn't sports. It's politics. It's nuance and policy. And I think the January 6th committee is one of the best examples of this, because of the way the Republicans handled it. They could have had a 9/11 style commission where there was an equal amount of Republicans and Democrats on it. And they said no to that. And then they said they wanted to have a committee that would look into 1/6. And they said they wanted to have the equal amount with the Democrats. They wanted veto power. They wanted subpoena power. They wanted to have the whole thing over by December 2021. And they thought that they had given so many intolerable requests that the Democrats would shut them down. And the Democrats were like, fine, you can have all those things. And they were like, oh, God, no, we don't want that either. And so they said, we're not doing that.
Right.
And so Nancy Pelosi was like, well, listen, we're going ahead anyway. We already have Liz Cheney. We already have Adam Kinzinger, who ended up joining. So we have a bipartisan committee. We're going to move forward anyway. Why don't you name a bunch more people to join us? And then they named people that were pro-insurrectionists. And they were like, we're not going to take these 2 people. We'll take these 3. And they said, we're pulling all of our people. So then what we've seen with the 1/6 committee is how government is supposed to function. We have missed it. We have forgotten what government is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be staid and serious and putting in the work. And you see them all sitting there asking the questions. One person talking.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's also competent, right? They've done the work. They've put in the time. They are asking questions specifically. They all have a certain time to talk. It's not 5 minutes. Each senator gets 5 minutes and they're going to get their hit in. And this is what we see now. This is all we see on TV, and it becomes a show. How much can I, how many people asked when Ketanji Brown Jackson was trying to become a Supreme Court justice? How many of them tried to burn her with, what is a woman? You're like, what are we doing? Like she's coming up to be a Supreme Court justice. This is the 5 minutes you want with her.
Well,
and it's become sport.
Yeah, they're creating sound bites.
And they're trying to get on right-wing media, and they're trying to get their sound bite, and they're trying to get their hit in. And that's not politics. That is sports. That's entertainment television. That's the problem with 24-hour news cycles. And I think the ultimate thing that I'm trying to do is stick to the truth, work in facts, admit when I'm wrong, do it seriously, because this division we feel in the country is by design, right?
Yeah.
Apathy that we feel in the country to politics from the beginning is by design. What are we told our entire lives not to talk about? Religion and politics, right? And then what are the 2 things that cause the most problem in the history of the world? Politics and religion, right? So this is by design. And the only people it serves are the people in charge and the moneyed interests that put them there, right? And so who does government end up serving? The people in charge and the moneyed interests that put them there. And so I think it's really essential that we all start paying attention, but not in a like my team, your team, red team, blue team kind of a way, but in a way that like, what are the things that matter to me? Why do they matter to me? And, how do I fight for them, or who up here is fighting for them for me? And I think that's kind of how we need to think of politics. And we need to ask for more government, like we're seeing in the 1/6 committee, more competent government doing their job. It shouldn't be, how many times can I get on Fox News with this sick burn that I came up with? Because that's not helping any of the American people. That's only helping that one person get more money from their donor.
Well, I think too, what we've seen, as you mentioned before, was the obstructionist strategy of the past decade or so. It's like we forgot what this even looks like when folks get together and actually sit down and talk about things and try to work on things. That is like of an old world that like no longer exists because of some of how interconnected all of this is, and starts to change.
Yeah, no, but it could exist. That's what I want people to feel. I want people to feel like, yes, it's broken. Yes, we are at a crossroads where we could either go down some sort of white Christian nationalist authoritarian path where our voices don't matter. Some of us have rights, some of us don't have rights. Or we could go towards this multicultural, pluralistic democracy that America has always promised it was, but never really lived up to the brochure of, right? This concept of obstructionism is purely a Republican concept because they no longer have the majority sentiment in the country. They know that their policies and their positions are no longer popular with the majority of the country. And they know that the electorate is constantly changing. So instead of expanding their message or trying to reach out to new voters, which they knew they had to do coming out of the very first Obama election. They were like, oh my gosh, we're in major trouble. They doubled down on white nationalism, on Christian nationalism, on evangelicalism. And now they've had to make a deal with the devil, with the Trump people and with the QAnon people and with the conspiracy theory people, because they only have their base left. And I think we have to ask ourselves as Americans, like, this is about if we want to be ruled by the minority, because they are the minority. And yet they're setting up the whole government so our voices don't matter anymore. That's what gerrymandering is. That's what voter suppression is. And that's what they're doing when the 85% of the country believes that a woman should have a right to her own body. And yet 30% of the country is going to take it away from all of us. That's rule by the minority. And we can't allow that to happen. And people need to understand that and vote against that, because this is purely a tactic of people that know they no longer can win in a pure democracy. So they're ready to abandon democracy for power.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think I'm fun at parties? Am I fun at parties? I don't know.
Talk about, well, so the midterms are right around the corner. I mean, it's the end of September already. What for you is like the most important issues going into this? And really, I think for people who follow politics, so much has changed. Like 3 months ago, you would have said, wow, the Democrats are going to totally lose every single seat they could possibly lose. And now I'm not so sure. They got a fighting chance. I think things are coming around. Talk about the midterms. Talk about like what are issues that are like you feel like are the most important issues for you that you hear people are like passionate about voting in the midterms.
Yeah, listen, everything you've heard about when it comes to midterms, all the colloquial information that comes around, you know, the party in power always loses seats. This is how it goes. The Republicans are going to win. All of this. No, this is not your father's midterms. This is not how it's going to go. And I do believe the Republicans shot themselves in the foot. I think they completely underestimated the blowback from being so gleeful about the reversal of Roe. I think they completely underestimated the blowback that people would feel about having any rights reversed, because people aren't stupid. They can see that you take rights away from one group of people. You don't stop there, right? You continue to take rights away from other groups of people. So yes, right now it's women who are on the chopping block, but then after that, it's going to be contraception. It's going to be gay rights. It's going to be trans rights. It's going to be, even interracial marriage. They haven't put that off the table. So like, what century are we living in? And I think that when you talk to people, like you said, 4 months ago, people were like, oh, gas prices, oh, inflation, which always bothered me because democracy was always on the chopping block. We have a party that tried to stay in power despite losing the election. And then we had an insurrection because of that. So for me, democracy was always the number one issue. But now people can see that that's happening. So when you talk to people, their number one issue is like, will my vote count? Democracy in general, and extremism. They're seeing that the Republican Party, which is now the Trump Party or the MAGA Party, because the Republicans have kind of deferred so much to this party that it's become their party. Even Donald Trump at his Ohio rally was saying, we, meaning MAGA Republicans, we are doing very well. The Democrats are failing. The Republicans are failing. He doesn't even equate himself with the Republican Party anymore. He knows he's something different. And the Republicans have allowed that to happen. So there is no team normal. There is no normal Republican because the Republican Party is holding up the extremist MAGA base. So there is only people who believe in democracy. And I always say to people, like, don't think of it like the Democrats. Think about it like the people who believe in democracy, because the Democratic umbrella is so gigantic. Yes. People don't realize that. Like, Joe Manchin to AOC is about 4 different parties. Like we have a working parliamentary system already in America. It's just all under the Democratic umbrella. They don't all agree. They fight all the time. They think we should do this or this or this. We are not a monolith. We are a giant party who believes overall in democracy, in the right to vote, in the right to freedoms, in the right to our own body. And then there is what used to be the Republican Party, who are now a monolith. And after going on and on about states' rights and how we should put abortion back to the states and it's all important to be in the states, 3 months later, they're like, we're going to have a national abortion ban, because it was never about states' rights. It was always about controlling people, particularly women. Yeah. And I saw a tweet the other day that I thought was fascinating that said, you see, you guys screwed up. You have to take our vote before you take our rights. Yeah. And I thought, oh, that's pretty dead on, right? Because this election has changed. Women are on the chopping block. Women in general. Please, you have an ectopic pregnancy? Sorry, you can go die. Oh, you had a miscarriage and it's released from your body, but it's floating around in there and it's poisoning you slowly. Sorry, you can die. You've been raped? Sorry, too bad. You have incest, your uncle keeps raping you? Sorry. You know, women in general, people who can have babies, men who are thinking honest, decent men have to say, like, no, this isn't the party that I believe in. And then you add things like what DeSantis and Abbott are doing to immigrants and to asylum seekers. And you think, are we the party? Am I a person who believes in the cruelty towards other people, the cruelty towards women, cruelty towards the other? Or am I someone who doesn't believe that? And if you're someone that doesn't believe that, who believes in freedom, then you're a Democrat for this election. The end. You don't have to love the Democrats. The Democrats are not a perfect party. They can be fixed. But the Republicans are irrevocably broken and must be defeated. And I think anyone who takes the time to really sit with that for a second will realize the importance of the midterms. And I think we've never seen people so fired up. And I think it's really thrilling. I think that we have a real opportunity here, because if we can hold the House, expand the Senate, hold these state houses and state legislatures, put AGs in power that actually believe in justice and the rule of law, people like Letitia James instead of what's going on in Texas. If we put people in power that believe in democracy and the rule of law and fairness, then we have 2 more years to pass these things people want, like voter protection laws and codifying Roe and codifying the right to gay marriage. These are all things that could happen. And then we come up in the 2024 election and we have a totally different battle. But if the Republicans can win in the midterms, we won't have a fair election ever again. They've already put in 450 new voter suppression laws around the country, and they are planning to install a president in 2024, no matter the votes. So this is the only thing I'm thinking about. The next, 55 days. This is essential that people understand what's at stake. And it's just about literally keeping democracy's head above water so that we can save it.
I think if you've ever been a person out there who thought that your vote mattered, we learned this year how much it really does. Leigh, tell us, what is it that you love about what you do?
You know, I think I would tell anyone in the world, if you can find yourself in a place in your life in which you spend your day with purpose, this is key. I work too many hours. I celebrated New Year's at my computer, and my son and husband were like, Happy New Year. And I thought, is it midnight? Like that's my life, which is not particularly cool. Yeah. But I will say, I like myself so much better with purpose and with direction, and where I feel like I'm making a life that made a difference in some way to the world. I tried really hard to have a career that made money. And I wasn't fulfilled by that. And I tried really hard to be the perfect stay-at-home mom. And I wasn't. I tried. I tried. There was a mom one day at school, and she had made a mosaic out of fruit of the African Sahara. Okay. I'm talking about animals, like mountainscape, landscape, out of blueberries and strawberries, and cut. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's not me. You know what I mean? Like, amazing. So great. She was, it blew my mind, but I thought, yeah, no, I'm never going to do that. So I can't be in this group. This is not my group. And so researching by myself, finding things I'm passionate about, getting other people passionate about, and trying to save the country for the kid I brought into it is essential. You know, at the end of the day, I'm an immigrant. I chose to live here. I'm from Canada, born and bred in Toronto. And I came to the States after graduate school to go to an acting conservatory. And I lived in New York during 9/11. And so the view from my apartment was the Twin Towers. And what happened in the days following the tragedy and watching people come together and watching this kind of patriotic can-do attitude and seeing people work together, I thought, I want to be a part of this country. This is a place I feel passionate about. And then watching the government and how they handled it moving forward after that event and the wars we went into and the war on terrorism, which was really very terrible for the entire Muslim community, and the way it all played out, that made me a Democrat. And when George Bush was reelected and that all that shenanigans went down in Florida, I thought, there's no way I can go through one more election and not vote. I have to be a citizen of this country. And so I did all the work to become a citizen. And when I was sworn in, I cried. When I voted in my first election, which was for Obama, I cried. And I really thought we were on the path to something greater. And then the past 6 years happened. And so I directed my life towards something that gave me purpose and something that allowed me to work for the country I thought I moved to. Because the more I knew, the more I realized it wasn't really living up to what it had promised to be. And I believe it can be what it tells everyone it is, this shining city on the hill, land of democracy, land of freedom, the place where anyone from anywhere can make it if they just work hard enough. I believe that. But that doesn't come just because. It doesn't come because we slap the bumper sticker on our car or say, America's the greatest country in the world. We have to fight for it to be. And to spend every day doing that, I feel like I've done something worthwhile with my life. So I would say to anybody who wants to do something, it doesn't have to be politics, of course, it can be anything, but find something that you care about and put your whole self into it, because you'll look in the mirror and you'll like yourself. And that's essential. And that's what you guys are doing at the Anthem Awards, right? You're doing purpose and mission-driven work. These are the people I'm talking about. And I'm telling anyone that isn't doing this work, find your passion, even if it's a couple hours a week. Find your passion and put it there, because you'll find that you like yourself so much better. We have so much time where we don't like ourselves for whatever reason. We don't fit into this box or that box. Or we don't look the way we thought we would look. Purpose-driven work gets rid of a lot of that. It really makes you feel like your life has purpose and meaning, and that's worthwhile.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yes. So I'm on Twitter at IamPoliticsGirl.com. The podcast is the PoliticsGirl Podcast. You can find that anywhere you get your podcasts. There is also a visual element to the podcast, which you can find on the PoliticsGirl YouTube. And then I am Breakfast Rant on Instagram, just Breakfast Rant on Instagram and Breakfast Rant on TikTok, which are just those morning rants at in my kitchen.
What are you going to be ranting about tomorrow morning? Do you know yet?
What's my next rant? I think my next rant is actually, conceptually, you should see my phone. It's like notes. But I am definitely doing one coming up about that quote, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice, and how I hate it. Because it implies justice will always happen. And that's not the truth. We have to work towards justice. We have to put in the effort for it to bend that way, because things don't go anyway unless we push them that way. And so I think probably one of my next rants will be about that, because I really think, it's justice is not a track we get on and travel that way. It's a track we build. And I think it's essential that that's what we're doing. So I will definitely have a rant about that in the near future.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to hearing more from you and more of your breakfast rants. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Don't forget, tomorrow is the final entry deadline for the
enter.
Awards. Make sure you enter your work at anthemawards.com. You can follow us on all of our socials at Anthem Awards. Email our customer service team and just reach out if you have any questions. We're here and really happy to help. Also, for those of you who are interested in politics, we're having an event in DC next week on Wednesday. So we hope for folks in the DC metro area, you'll come and be a part of the conversation that we're having with a bunch of amazing voices from our community talking about advocating for progressive policies in advance of the midterm election. So we hope you'll join us then. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.